Welcome
to the Age of Awakening.
Please identify yourself. Enter.
Hey, Triple P Nation, it's your humble host, Dr. Jay LaGuardia. And on this week's show, we're going to discuss the science of regenerative and longevity health. Specifically, we're going to talk about why people are turning to regenerative health and longevity medicine as their primary source of true healthcare, not just disease and symptom management, but actual healthcare. Plus, why traditional medicine is so far behind this curve. You're going to learn about peptides. What are they? How do they work? Are they safe? Who can benefit? And why you must avoid sourcing your peptides from social media influencers. We're going to talk about the future of peptide industry, as well as some exciting new peptides hitting the market that are going to have major impact on aging, healing, cancer reduction, and so much more. We'll talk about the rapid growth of GLPs and why so many people are using them incorrectly. Who's to blame? And could they be doing them more harm than good? And on the flip side, we're going to tell you everything you need to know about using GLPs safely and effectively to maximize your results. Plus, you're going to learn why the key to health and longevity is your metabolic health. What is metabolic health? And how can you optimize yours? Because the fact is, guys, the underlying cause, the root cause of all disease is poor metabolic health. And finally, but certainly not least, you will also learn about HRT, hormone replacement therapy, what I like to call hormone optimization, and why hormone levels have dropped so significantly over the last few decades, and what you need to do to optimize yours for optimal health, longevity, and quality of life. So I'm excited to have Jay Campbell. Jay is a preeminent expert in this industry. He is a health optimization pioneer, 5-time international bestselling author, one of the most respected voices in peptides, hormone optimization, and longevity. He's the co-founder of BioLongevity Labs, the rapidly emerging peptide and bioregulator powerhouse known as the Amazon for biohackers. Jay has spent more than 2 decades pushing the frontier of metabolic health into anti-aging science. What really sets Jay apart is his rare ability to translate some of this complicated, cutting-edge biomedical research into really simple, practical, life-changing strategies. That's what you're going to learn in this podcast today. We really chop it up. We break it down into simplistic forms. I like it that way. Helps me understand and learn. And like I said, Jay is a mentor to us at revitalizing health and hormones. We've used a lot of his research and implementation in our care at the office. And the reality is, in an industry flooded with misinformation, shortcuts, your pharmaceutical hype, your social media bros, Jay is really the voice people trust to deliver clarity, integrity, and evidence-backed guidance. And his work blends deep scientific expertise with consciousness-driven philosophy. It's all about raising your vibration, optimizing your biology, and elevate what's possible for you in your life. So I'm going to encourage you to sit back, take some notes. Look, we all know people who are struggling with their health, with their mental health, with their physical health, who are maybe dealing with very serious diseases. Share this information. As I say all the time, great content should flow through you, not to you. It's not yours to own. It's not mine to own. All we can do is empower our brothers and sisters with the right information so they can make better choices about their health. And I'm telling you, the future of healthcare is regenerative longevity health. Enjoy the interview. Triple P Nation, I'm excited to have a friend of mine, Jay Campbell, on the show this week. We have attempted to record this episode. This is now the 3rd time, and this is going to be the charm. So, Jay, welcome to the show, man.
Jay, what's going on, my brother? Yeah, man, 3rd time is the charm. Let's do this, my friend.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, Jay is just a leading example in the longevity space. He is just changing the world. He is setting the course for a new direction for how we live, more importantly, how we age and how well we age. And his new book, Metabolic Awakening, really confronts one of the biggest health crises of our time. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how he got into this space. So let's start there, Jay. How did you actually get into this space? How did you actually find this in your cup?
Yeah, I mean, really simply, I got kicked in the testicles when I was 29 years old playing an adult men's basketball league in Southern California and checked myself out of the game, keeled over, whatever. But about 8 or 9 weeks later, I was just destroyed, feeling run down, had low back issues, like everything in my body hurt. And so I went to my PPO doctor. I worked for the Los Angeles Times at that point in my life. I'm obviously 55 now, so it's a long time ago. And I just recently gotten engaged to be married. That was my first wife. She's long gone. Shout out to Kelly. But I went to my PPO doctor working for the Los Angeles Times, and he recommended me to of course, I didn't know at the time, but it was a Harvard trained endocrinologist by the name of Dr. Raymond Scruggs. And he took my labs and he found that I had like the testosterone levels of a geriatric man, and he said, look, I can put you back on I can put you on therapeutic testosterone and have you right as rain in 8 to 9 weeks, 10 weeks. He goes, but go home, talk to your wife to be, your fiance at the time, and make sure she's okay with it. And I was a very healthy guy at this point. I'm again, like 3 months from turning 30, but I knew nothing about therapeutic testosterone or anything like that. So my wife, of course, agreed. So he put me on therapeutic testosterone, and I came to see him like as he said, I started feeling amazing. 8 to 10 weeks back, I went to see him for a checkup, and he wanted to take me off, and I was like, dude, you're not taking me off this. This is like the most transformative thing I've ever done in my life. Holy shit! Like, no way. So at that point, then I just became this like incredibly voracious student of reading everything that was available. This is in the very infancy of the internet, when the signal to noise ratio was mostly signal and very little noise. So you could get lots of information, but, there was no Reddits. There was no, Google didn't exist. There was nowhere to get information other than in like anonymous Usenet underground forums. And so, at that point, I started working with different doctors. I moved to a different place in Southern California, and I wasn't working with Dr. Scruggs anymore. And so I was just working with different delivery systems. At the same time I was using therapeutic hormones, I was also starting with therapeutic peptides, which actually was probably around 2003. So maybe 4 years later. So when I tell people that, hey, man, I've been using therapeutic peptides for 22 years, most people are like, what? Because obviously peptides have just really come into the mainstream in the last couple of years. But yeah, so I mean, really, I'm, Jay, old school, as a lot of people called me, like OG biohacker, who was doing biohacking things before people even knew what the word biohacking meant, including myself. So, all along that time, as I was playing around with delivery systems for testosterone and hormones, I was also playing around with peptides. And so eventually, in a long-winded way, I got back to that in 2023. I wrote my first book on peptides, and it came out on January 31st. This is obviously after writing multiple books on hormones. It came out on January 31st of 2023, and it was right in the middle of the COVID, vaccine debacle. And it blew up because so many people were looking for alternative forms of healing, from the vax. And so, subsequently now in the last 3.5 years, a lot of people now look to me as like a leading authority on peptides. And obviously it's deservedly so, because of the time that I put in, the thousands of people that I've coached and mentored, et cetera. But it's interesting, I think, now to kind of segue into this. So many people are talking about peptides, as you know, it's actually a circus. You've got mothers, women, so to speak, who use peptides one weekend and then the next weekend start selling them out of their car. I mean, it's like all over social media. Everybody's a peptide expert. Everybody's talking about peptides. I mean, it's probably one of the greatest, like, I would call it like a 3-card Monte game that's ever really happened, I think, with like, call it longevity, medicine or whatever it is, functional medicine, because now everybody is a peptide expert. And very, very few people even know what a peptide is or even how to use them. Again, they listen to people like me talk about them. There's other smart people, of course, talking about them. And now they're all selling them. And I think I told you this on our last time we did our podcast, which obviously the recording didn't work, but I know this from testing products, and my company spends lots of millions of dollars in testing. 75% of research peptides that are sold right now are fake. Fake. So you've got tons of people out there in the peptide space right now selling research products that aren't real. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're all bad actors or people with, bad intention or malintention, but they are buying Chinese bootleg peptides and then relabeling them or reselling them or whatever. And they don't realize that the people they're buying from are giving them underdosed or counterfeit or even fake products. So the whole peptide space right now is, like I told you at the beginning, a circus. And it's not even just in my space, which is, again, we call ourselves direct to consumers or the research use only space. Even the compounded space, has lots of compound pharmacies putting out bogus products too. So it's crazy, how this is all working out, I think, from just a big picture perspective of like where we are.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the consumer / the patient, is the one that is disadvantaged because as you know, peptides are truly amazing. And we can get into that and talk about what they do. But there's just too many people right now attempting to get into the world of peptides, and they're being bamboozled because of the fraud. And just they call it the generalized circus that the whole entire environment is made of right now.
Yeah, we're seeing that in our clinic. People coming in who've been on peptides and they're like, I tried this, it didn't really work. This stuff, I'm not really sure.
Right,
It didn't work, right? And we know there's a variety of reasons why it may not work. But I said, we ask them, where is your source? And they're buying them, like you mentioned, from online, from this person, that person.
Dude, they're buying them from bodegas in Brooklyn.
You're kidding. That's crazy.
No, dude, there was literally a huge article on CBS News. I figured you would have seen it. I should have sent it to you. I have my team sent to you. CBS News did an undercover investigation, and they sent in a guy who works for him who's actually a pretty fit dude, Asian guy. His name's Adam McGalloway or something. And he did his giant, body cam hidden, and they're selling retatrutide in bodegas, bro. So it's a circus. And, very truthfully, like the owners of BioLongevity Labs, we were actually talking on our owners call earlier today, but this was mainstream Thursday of last week. It's actually, as much as I hate the FDA and I hate people attempting to regulate, what we as adults can consent to do, they almost don't have an option at this point because the public safety is now at risk. There are so many retards, let's just call them that. They're in this space who are bad actors, who are in it for a money grab, who clearly are selling fake products and ripping people off. I mean, I could tell you stories, dude, of things I've heard in the last 2 weeks. Like one of my good friends who's in our space called me about, I don't know, I want to say it was somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks ago. Times run into each other at this point. And he goes, bro, look at this. And it was a bank statement from some kid who came to him asking him about opening an LLC. And Jay, the kid was making $1.3 million a month selling bootleg peptides, and he was 22 years old in Southern California. Sort of got him a life. And so like the peptide space at this point right now is a circus. And I say that as a guy with one of the leading, research use only companies in the entire world, who again spends lots of money to test our products and to do everything by the book and legally and all that stuff. And so I just hope at some point that somebody does step in because, like you said, you guys have patients who come in and they tell you like, yeah, I tried peptides and they don't work. Or, you hear stories like that and you're like, they don't work, huh? But you realize they're going to, like you said, buying them from shady companies who target them on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and they offer them cheap, low-priced peptides, and then they buy them because they're, everybody wants to get in on peptides, and then they don't work, and then they're like, wait a minute, I'm getting scammed. Jay Campbell's a scammer. Dude, I have so many people that think I'm a fraudster because they think that peptides are a scam. It's literally insane what's happening right now. But I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, obviously I get very good legal counsel from Jeff Cohen. Shout out to Jeff Cohen at Florida Healthcare Law. But like, I don't know, he stands to think that everybody's going to be safe and that, they're going to change. This pharmacy committee, as you know, is meeting this month on the 23rd and 24th to debate whether or not they're going to move those 9 peptides from class 2 to class 1. And by the way, let me share right now with everybody, because it's already open book. They're not going to move them from class 2 to class 1. They've already said, in their minutes last week, that they're not going to recommend it. So it's like a big charade that all these people are going up to Capitol Hill to pontificate about the benefits and values of peptides. And meanwhile, the FDA whispers out of the other side of their mouth saying, oh, we're not going to recommend they go to class 1, right? They're going to have another meeting in February of next year, and then they're going to convene, and as you know, the FDA is like turning an aircraft carrier around in a hurricane in the middle of the Pacific. They don't do anything fast. But it's a circus. It's absolutely a circus. And like I said, the problem is that people that watch this show and want to take advantage of the amazing, wondrous values and benefits of peptides are left holding the bag because they don't know where to get their peptides. They don't know if a doctor can write a script legally. I mean, it's just a big circus, bro.
It is. So let's unpack. For those who are hearing about peptides for the first time, they probably just came out of a coma. Or if they have heard about peptides, they don't quite understand it. So let's break it down from its simplistic form. What is a peptide? Are they endogenous to the body? Have they been around long? Where do they really come from? And what has been the precipitous that's really led to where we are right now, where peptides are, one of the hottest items when it comes to longevity medicine?
Yeah. So very simply, I think the simplest term for a peptide is it's a chain of amino acids. The longer the chain, the more likely it has to be injected. And again, I think I said this before, I'll say it again, like injecting a peptide or really any drug is always going to be most effective or highest impact as a delivery system over anything else for two reasons. Number one, crosses the blood-brain barrier the fastest. And then number two, it gets into portal circulation or systemic circulation the fastest, so that it can be delivered to wherever it's targeting on the body, right? Because again, they're just basically cellular messengers and cellular signals or signaling molecules. And so for that purpose, they're very, very safe, right? Like I've said this a million times, I've never seen in 23 years of observing and using peptides on myself and my friends and my wife and my inner circle, I've never seen a single person overdose, right? So I've never seen a serious problem. I do see idiots who, get massive doses of GLPs and stop eating for a week and, end up getting gallbladder issues and obviously, slow gastric emptying, and they have, that kind of nonsense. But those are just a situation of abuse and obviously super physiologic dosages, but even those don't kill people. You have some events and you have some adverse issues, but, they're very, very safe. And again, because they're naturally produced and they're found, naturally occurring in the body, they just don't really cause side effects or anything. The side effects that people experience from them, as are, they might get a little bit of nausea for a minute. They might get a little bit of a rash, or they might get a little cellulitis, like some red bumps where they're injecting. But it's nothing, like allopathic, call them Rockefeller petroleum distillate meds that break down in the body and leave oil residue and cause all sorts of symptoms and side effects. And as you know, 60s and, that's the whole pill scam of people in their 60s and 70s. They take 15 to 20 pills a day, and every pill is color coded to address the side effects of the other pill.
Right.
It's completely insane, but you don't have that with peptides. And so I really feel like they're not really the future. They're the now, for the people who are educated and sophisticated enough to get access to them now, they really are they're the current, standard, de novo standard of healing.
Sure. So most people, again, unless you've been in a coma, know about GLPs, but there's so much more to peptides, so many more uses that peptides can help in a variety of different ways. Why don't you just explain a couple of those, or a few of those, whatever you want to roll with.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I think the best way to talk about peptides is like, what do you need a peptide for? I think if we classify peptides in like a sandbox, we would say there's the GLP peptides, which obviously help for metabolic issues. They also now, the studies prove that they help for brainwave patterning. You can cure alcoholism, weed, vape addictions, porn addictions, video game addictions. It basically changes the brainwave patterning and rewires like dopaminergic, serotonergic, dendritic pathways in the brain. So you can actually take a microdose of that and completely cure yourself of your addiction to gambling or something like that. So those are going to be huge drugs, especially in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, as more and more people find out about those. Because as you know, most people just think they suppress appetite or whatever, but they do way more. So those are going to be amazing tools. And then you would get into like fat loss, muscle gain, cognition restoring, longevity, immunity, anti-aging, and then of course, healing, skin restoration. What am I forgetting? Mitochondrial optimizing. There's just so many different peptides. And right now there's like 49 commercially available at last count. There might be a couple more. But Jay, there's thousands of peptides that we've already identified in amino acid sequencing with AI. It's just that we can't commercially manufacture them yet because obviously all the manufacturing and the synthesis of peptides goes on in China. There's some in India, but there's almost no synthesis in the States. It's a very small amount. There's some, but it's very small amounts, and it's very ineffective because we don't have the massive synthesizer waste disposal machines that they have in Hong Kong. And those cost a lot of money because actually when you make peptides, there is a lot of bioactive contaminant waste for the stuff that doesn't actually take. And you have to incinerate it. You know, in China, they just jump it in the Yangtze River and don't give a rat's ass, right? So there's like 20 of them in China, and they're constantly manufacturing and synthesizing peptides. So when somebody tells you in America that they manufacture and they synthesize in the US, they're allowed to say that legally. It's been upheld in court, even if the API, which is the active pharmaceutical ingredient, comes from China. So if the active pharmaceutical ingredient comes from China, but it's then labeled, bottled, lyophilized, caked, and filled in a vial in these states, you are legally allowed to say it's manufactured in the USA. But come on, we actually know that the real synthesized raw material and powder is actually coming from China. But that's kind of a game that people play in the space. But almost everyone, from compounding pharmacies, from pharmaceutical giants, and of course to us, research use only companies, we all get our API out of China. That's just the way it is. And my expectation is that in the next 5 years, nothing will change. We might start seeing a little bit of API coming into the US in 3 to 4 years where there will be an ability to buy. But as you know, bro, if it starts getting made here, it'll go 10 to 15x, because they can get cheap labor, cheap manufacturing, cheap overhead, cheap everything in China compared to here. So it's an interesting time to be in that space right now because fortunes are being made. But I think people need to understand that like nothing is actually being made in the US other than them, taking the API, which again is the active pharmaceutical ingredient, and just perfecting it and labeling it and bottling it. And, they also they essentially re-lyophilize it if they're caking it here. And, just like us, and we can say that, right? We can say made in the USA, but all of it comes from China. There's no nobody can get away with saying that anymore without me explaining what that really means.
Which is kind of what you alluded to before, right? There's the black market, there's the gray market, and then you're getting it from reputable sources, such as your company and compounding pharmacies or pharmacies. So, and I think this is the thing that most people don't understand is when you buy it online, you're buying either gray or black market. It's never been third-party tested. It's full of contaminants, endotoxins. It may not even have anything, as far as the peptide in it goes. And so, I mean, you're literally playing Russian roulette with your health when you're buying it offline from a non-reputable source.
100%. And look, I, as a guy, owns BioLongevity Labs and sells and trusts and loves the RUO market and has been teaching people how to become, as I say, empowered, sovereign, and free with their personal health for 2 decades. I don't have a problem if you buy a research peptide. But what I do say, which you just did a good job of, repeating, is that if you're buying a research peptide, you have to do your due diligence. You have to make sure that that company has a batch number, a lot number, a traceable certificate of authenticity that you can verify and vet that they are testing and they are doing what is called triple certification verification or triple certification authentication, where there's one company testing, which is the actual manufacturer, second party, independent, testing for lipopolysaccharides, heavy metals, contaminants, toxins, endotoxins, molds, all of that. And then you have a third company, and no one's doing that. We do, but very few people are testing from a third spot where they're verifying the 2 first testers. So we believe and hope that with the American Peptide Association, which is again founded by, our attorney, Jeff Cohen, and Florida Healthcare Law, I'm one of the founding members of that company. And there's a lot of other, movers and shakers inside the peptide space that are part of it. We hope to get some sort of a lobby and some respect in Congress so that we can create that standard of testing for all peptides. Because again, at the end of the day, whether you're a researcher, buying research peptide, or you're a patient of a compound pharmacy physician like yourself, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you can verify the product is what it says it is. And right now, you'd be surprised, a lot of, just as the research companies are bad at selling, bogus products, dude, there's a ton of compounded products that are also low quality because nobody's testing them. If you got 503Bs in this state, 503As in this state, if they're not being, actively monitored by their state medical licensing boards or the state, compounding pharmacy observatory companies in their state, dude, they can get away with it. It's like Jeff says, Jeff Cohen will say, there's no difference in the testing of the best research companies and the best compound pharmacies. The only difference might be the integrity of the owners, right? And that's where you got to be really cautious and careful, because if the owner's integrity is poor, they're going to cut costs. They're going to lower standards. They're going to not test a batch here and there to get away, again, to save money, to save margin, to hold margin. And so that's the kind of stuff that you see. So again, if you're the end user, whether you're a patient or you're a researcher, make sure that where you're buying is absolutely traceable and that you can go online yourself without having to call an attorney or call the warehouse or call the company and vet that what they have is legally reproducible and findable online, again, through a batch number and a lot number that proves that claim of that product is traceable.
Yeah. I mean, just recently I heard a personal trainer and a massage therapist were selling him out of their businesses. So stay away from those type of things. So I want to step back now into more of a broader approach. And the approach is this, right? At Revitalizing Health and Hormones, when our patients come in, we do a comprehensive assessment analysis to determine even if they're a good candidate for peptides. You mentioned right off the start with your TRT experience at 29. We talk about the capstone to this process is optimizing hormones before you even get into peptide therapy. So talk about the link there, why that's so important. And people are looking to shotgun peptides, similar as, hey, they go to their doctor and they say, I've got upset stomach, get me some Prilosec. This is this is a comprehensive, vitalistic approach, taking a focus on let's pick off the top tiers first. So once you get into peptides, you can have the best results.
Exactly. And, very, very truthfully, I tell people this all the time. People are like, you're Mr. Peptide, how can you say that? But it's the truth. Like, if you don't have, the 4 pillars dialed in your life before you start peptides, you're throwing your money in the trash. And the 4 pillars to me, and there's obviously more, but the 4 pillars are you living insulin controlled? Are you metabolically flexible? Are you eating relative to your energetic demand? B is, and maybe bigger, they're all equal really, but are you hormonally balanced and optimized? As you know, bro, most people are not. If you're fat and inflamed, you have a hormonal deficiency. I don't need a doctor to give my, total testosterone, free testosterone measured. If I got 40 pounds of belly fat, that instantly means that you're not hormonally optimized. And then obviously, the bigger other needle movers are you doing resistance training? Are you doing some form of cardiovascular training? Are you sleeping hopefully 7 to 8 hours a night? Are you mitigating EMFs? You know what I mean? Like, these are like very basic foundational lifestyle precepts. But if you're not doing any of those and you move right into using peptides, I mean, you're literally wasting your time. Case in point, if you're not hormonally balanced or optimized as a man or woman and you start a GLP, you're going to lose muscle. It's pretty simple, right? Because most of them aren't going to start off with a microdose because they're not getting that kind of advice from most physicians that are doing these. Clearly, there's exceptions in the industry, thank God. But the average doctor who prescribes a GLP literally gets their prescribing diagnosis or prescribing instructions from a weekend seminar or the pharma rep who came in for 45 minutes to tell them how to do it. And as you know, the package insert is literally 6 to 8 milligrams of the product, because in the studies, the studies were done in obese diabetic men and women. Think about that. The worst dumpster fire health problems in the world: high insulin resistance, high inflammation, high visceral fat, again, metabolic deranged. And these are people that are taking massive dosages. And then, as you know, Jay, titrating higher and higher and higher to wipe their receptors out, cause all these symptoms and side effects that we all know about, that we all hear about in the mainstream. So the reality is like, if you're not understanding how to do those, this is what ends up happening. And so all those people that don't have those 4 things that I said, are they metabolically flexible and living insulin controlled? Are they hormonally optimized and balanced? Are they lifting weights and doing cardiovascular training? And then are they getting enough sleep and then mitigating EMF? Those are 4 basic things, but almost no one does that. And if you're not doing those and you start peptides, and again, it doesn't have to be just a GLP, it can be any of the other things, you're not going to get the results that somebody who is.
There's no question about that. And, the most difficult that we see is the people want to come in and want to use the GLPs, for weight loss. And they don't want to do any of the resistance exercise. And we're pretty much straightforward with them. If you're not going to do it, you're not going to get the results. You may lose weight, but it's not the weight that you're looking for. And you're going to wind up in the same position before, because you're screwing up your metabolic rate even more so than when you walked in our office. So you're going to be in a far worse place 6 to 12 months from now if you don't implement these steps. And it's something we really impress upon. If you're not willing to do it, don't start.
And I'm glad you said that. Dr. Rudolph Eberwein, who's the guy that I interview in the foreword for my book, Metabolic Awakening with GLPs, he's one of the world's foremost prescribers of GLPs. He's literally been prescribing GLP since 2006 in his obesity clinic that him and his wife run in Miami. And he works also with tons of indigenous people. He's an amazing guy. He does a lot of pro bono work. But in his interview with me, and this was probably, we added some stuff to it in the book that came out in February of this year, but this real interview was, I want to say in the end of 2023, might have been early 2024, but he literally said that he advises physicians that if you prescribe a GLP without all those other things that we said, you're guilty of malpractice. And it's true, Jay, you really are guilty of malpractice, because if they do this without those things, they're going to suffer muscle loss. They're going to have facial muscle collapse or jaw muscle collapse or neck muscle collapse or butt muscle. I mean, all the things we see in the mainstream. And as you said, the downstream metabolic dysregulation they suffer, the thyroid damage, the hair loss. I mean, I can go on, all this other side effects that they're suing, all these class action lawsuits, which by the way, are all going to be thrown out. All of that can be avoided, but it's not going to be avoided if you as a clinician, and I don't like to always just say clinicians, because as you know, there's NPs and there's PAs, there's prescribers. If you're not aware and you don't provide that instruction to the person that you prescribe to, again, as he says it, you're guilty of malpractice, because Jay, the truth is these are very powerful drugs and they will cause muscle loss. And as you and I both know, as soon as a person suffers muscle loss, it's all downhill from there. Thyroid damage, again, all the things that we know come. And like you said, you're now in hell and suffering and trying to get out of a rabbit hole for 6 to 12 months. And it's really, really difficult, especially if you don't have any of those 4 things that we already talked about, or 5 things that we talked about, established and dialed in. So I think if you're watching this podcast, and I have to say this because this is in the book in chapter 1, you're probably part of the 95%. The 95% who start with GLPs do it completely wrong. And is it their fault, or is it the physician's fault? Is it the pharmaceutical company's fault? Is it the pharma rep's fault? I think the blame lies with everyone, including you as the patient or the consumer, because I think, Jay, at this point, we have to say this. There's so much information out there today that if you go to your prescriber blindly listening to them without having some semblance of awareness or understanding of what you're supposed to do, and they screw you up, then shame on you. Because there's enough good information out there now where you know that you have to do this right. And look, let's just define doing this right. Number 1, it's a microdose. And number two, it's having the lifestyle that you have to have when you're using these. And again, I don't think, Jay, that they have to be like you and I and already hormonally optimized and living insulin controlled and training, et cetera. But as long as they embrace those practices while they're doing it, they're going to avoid most of the symptoms and side effects that most of the people that experience it, which again is 95% of GLP users. And look, man, I say this, we talk about this in the book too. The average physician, celebrity doctor, celebrity influencer, guru, all have bad positions on GLPs because they're misinformed. Because look, at the end of the day, when you look at the studies on these amazing drugs, they're incredible when they're followed correctly. They're horrible when you're not using them correctly. And this is why it's so important that we have to teach, especially guys like you and me, that they're just tools. They're not magic bullets. They're not easy buttons. If somebody sells you on that, whether it's a physician or a friend or anyone, they're, look at them and say, hey, thank you, but no thank you. Because they're not these things that a lot of people think they are. And again, look, I always say this, it's important. Sure, you may start a GLP at a high dose and stop eating and have weight loss in the first 3 days to 5 days to a week, maybe even 10 days, and think it's great, right? Like, guys will say to me like, oh man, I'm down 2 belt sizes in 10 days. And I'm like, are you lifting? Well, why would I want to do that, bro? Are you on testosterone? So it's like the same old thing. You know where this is going, right? It's going to be bad. It's going to end up bad. But the truth is like, I do find that I have empathy for a lot of these people because they're so clueless, again, due to all these things we already mentioned. They don't realize that when they start seeing that initial weight loss, that they're not doing anything right. And it's going to end in a horrible way for them because nobody's teaching them.
You're 100% correct. And this really leads to kind of a cultural aspect that's occurred really over the last 2 generations where, the whole concept, it was a caloric thing. You know what I mean? Too many calories in, too many calories, or not enough calories out. And we wanted the quick fixes. They had all these liquid diets, and all you had to do was drink this shake for 6 months and you lose all this weight, 45, 50% of it being lean muscle. As we know, the greatest predictor of longevity after the age of 60 is lean muscle and VO2 max. And so now you have generations of people who think it's a quick fix like the previous diet fads that were before, rather than, and this comes on the clinician and the education, it has to be emphasized, this is a shift in mindset and change of life behaviors. If you want sustainable long-term health and longevity, we have to look at this as a puzzle and fit those pieces in, and you have to be willing to make the commitment to get the results. Otherwise, again, it's going to be transient. You're going to wind up in the same spot you were before, if not worse. So explain specifically what the difference of microdosing compared to like if they were go to their physician and they would put them on a GLP and never speak to someone like you or I.
Yeah, it's a great one. Very good question. And we have to unpack this. So the package inserts for the products, and again, we'll just call them Wegovy. I forget the other one. What's the other one for semaglutide? There's 2 of them.
Tirzepatide?
It's Wegovy. What is it?
Tirzepatide?
What do you think? No, tirzepatide is stage 2. There's 2 different ones.
Oh, yeah.
But because the people in their mind, they don't know the names, the chemical names. The chemical names are obviously semaglutide and tirzepatide.
Right.
But they just know them as the brand names. But the truth is that if they go to an average garden variety physician, prescriber, and even a functional medicine doc, right? They're looking at the instructions that come with the medication, whether it's a compound pharmacy or whether it's the actual, manufacturer itself, like Novo Nordisk. If it was Wegovy and it was semaglutide, or if it was Lilly and it was tirzepatide, Mounjaro, Zepbound. And those things are going to be literally designed for obese people, obese diabetic people in the trials. And so they're always like, and again, I'm going from memory. I think semaglutide is like 4.5 milligrams. And then tirzepatide is like 6 milligrams. And so if that's what you're going to take as a normal person who just needs to lose 15 or 20 pounds, which is, again, most people that are starting these things, yeah, surely there are morbidly obese people on them. But again, even the morbidly obese people don't need a super physiologic level starting out. They need to get an initial, what I call start low, go slow acclimatation to their receptor sensitivity versus just bootleg or just bombing them, from the start, which is the pharmaceutical companies do. And again, we got to say this, the pharmaceutical companies, the pharma rep and the doctors, it's easier for them to start high and go higher because everybody makes more money that way.
Sure.
Right? You blow out the patient's receptors, you get them addicted to the drug at a higher level, at a higher frequency. And so it just is one giant money-making machine versus if you start them out on a clinically, very surgically precise microdose, which again, I'm going from memory here because I only use Reddit nowadays, but I'm pretty sure that like SEMA is like 1.25 milligrams, 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week. And terzapatide is literally way less than that. It's like 0.35 to 0.5 a couple times a week, maybe 3 times a week, and get them acclimated so that they have slight appetite suppression. With terzapatide, they have glucogen stimulation. So they have, a metabolic ramp or increase. And they get acclimated over time versus just wiping out their receptors with these super high dosages from the start. Whereas, all it does is lead to bad things because literally within 4 to 6 weeks, their body's receptors can't even receive the signal because it's been overwhelmed. And again, as you know, at 6 to 8 weeks is when the death spiral starts, right? This is when they're now losing hair, gaining weight because they're not eating but once every 2.5 or 3 days. And then all of a sudden when they do eat, they binge eat. They're eating like shit. They're not eating clean food. I mean, it's a mess. And so all of these things that happen to people are real that we hear about in the mainstream news. And, the people glom onto, again, the celebrity doctors, the gurus and stuff who say, oh God, GLPs are the worst things ever. But in the studies, and again, I write about this in the book, and this is very important. And it's not often, but it's happened. In the studies where they give people a microdose, and I shouldn't say a microdose because they don't really define it as that, but they give them a very low, precise dose.
Sure.
The weight that comes off is actually maintained. Isn't it crazy and funny how that actually works out? But obviously in practice, as you know, and I know, with working with so many people, we see it all the time. We see it all the time. You start with a microdose, the body gets acclimated, you follow the principles, you do the things that, again, all the things that we already talked about, and boom, you've now changed your lifestyle. You've created new habits, and these habits become permanent over time. Because why wouldn't they? You've lost weight, you look better, you feel better, you have more energy, you're ready, libido's increased, everything in your life improves.
Yeah, 100%. There's no question about it. And that's the aspect of it, right? That's where the neuroplasticity occurs, is when you change those behaviors, the brain rewires itself, and it's like, I want more of that. And that becomes your dominant thought pattern. And therefore that becomes the new you. So we talk about creating a new you. The new you comes from the changing of the habits and implementing these other things while using a sound protocol to get the results you want with the GLPs.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's, again, don't start a GLP if you're not hormonally balanced or optimized. And I really think that that's a huge, statement, because you don't have to be on therapeutic testosterone, clearly, but if you are, the likelihood that you're going to suffer muscle loss is way less. And it's also a very powerful, as you and I say before, like tool in the tool belt, to override all of the external stressors like, endocrine disrupting chemicals, phthalates, atrazine, all the stuff that is just bombarding our cells, from every level. If you are hormonally balanced or optimized, or at least working to get there, taking a GLP while that happens you're very much minimizing the potential negative effects.
It's interesting. I know you've heard this, that testosterone levels in males are down 50% over the last 35, 40 years, give or take. So what you just said, reminded me, the environmental impact that's causing a significant depletion in male testosterone. It used to be that when women were having issues with fertility, or when there was fertility issues with a couple, it was primarily women. Now it's primarily men, because motility, lack of sperm production. So I think it's even more so important now. Young males have their testosterone tested early and monitored as they age, assuming it's good when they're young, but we see people coming in their 20s in testosterone levels 200 or less. And that they should be somewhere between 7 and 9 or higher. And
Yeah,
it's just
or higher. Yeah.
It's just crazy what we're seeing. And I don't think people are understanding that this is not a genetic issue. This is an environmental issue, and you can't outrun it.
You can't. And, it's funny you say that. I was thinking about this the other day, because as you know, there's no coincidence. There's only synchronicities in life. But I think that what happened to me when I was 29 in Los Angeles, in, one of the most contaminated places in the world, back in 1999, I was probably being tested to learn about this because I was one of the first people that was probably experiencing, the environmental onslaught that was slowing down, again, causing what is known as class 2 hypogonadism, which is environmental / epigenetic, testosterone deficiency. And because Jay, now, I mean, dude, let's be honest. If you live in the upper Midwest, your body is being annihilated by chemicals in the environment, BPCs in the water, food control, birth control that's washed off in all the aquifers, all the underground water filtration systems.
Glyphosate.
You cannot avoid it. Yeah. You cannot avoid what is happening. And, you're talking about guys in their 20s. Dude, I have doctors talk to me all the time, and they see guys who are 18 and 19. The parents force the kids to come in, and they do their labs, and they have free testosterones of 0.
Wow.
0. So we're in an environment right now that is completely contaminated, totally contaminated. And if you're not smart enough to understand that there are things that you have to do and be proactive versus reactive, you're behind the 8 ball, and there's really nothing else you can do. And again, that's why we have so many people who are hormonally dysregulated. And look, I say this all the time, and a lot of people get pissed off. I don't care. If you're fat and you're insulin resistant, which is obviously de facto, if you have one, you have the other, you have a testosterone deficiency. Your body cannot produce ample, free, and total testosterone. And as you know, it's really only free that matters because it's bioavailable and accessible. It cannot naturally produce it. You're so dysregulated. You've got cytokine storms. You've got all that insulin resistance. You've got all that inflammation. Your body is not producing testosterone, at least not adequately, or I should say optimally. So if you're fat and insulin resistant, just assume you have a testosterone deficiency. Don't wait, for somebody to diagnose it. Go get your labs done, which you can do anywhere nowadays. There's hundreds of lab companies. It's like going to Amazon, right? Get a male or female hormonal health profile, and then go to a doctor like you, or go to a doctor that can treat you. But I'm blown away at how many people are walking around today with no knowledge that they're hormonally dysregulated, because again, it's not taught. It's not really, they can't go to their garden variety PPO or HMO insurance doctor and get this information. They just can't.
Not only can't they get it, but even if they ask for it, they wouldn't be given it. We have patients who come in who go see, I'd say it's a crazy story. We had a patient came in, a woman, she started care a few months prior, and she was just having an incredible experience. Her life changed, her mood changed, hope and optimism. She was feeling herself again. Her energy improved. So she went in for her annual physical, and she put down, where you put your medications, that she was on testosterone and HRT therapy. And her physician said, "Why are you on testosterone?" She said, "Are you trying to transition?" And the woman said to her, our patient said to her,
"Unreal.
What did you just ask me?" She goes, "Yeah, there's no reason for you to be on testosterone. Women don't have testosterone." This is the
Yes.
You came out of medical school? Yeah. It's incredible. I had a gentleman.
Listen, I did a podcast today with a woman. I forget her name. She's a big brand, and she has, it's women in perimenopause and menopause. It's her audience. And she told me, well, we talked about this, that the average woman prescribing hormones to perimenopausal and postmenopausal women, due to the WHI, right, which was the Women's Health Initiative that set therapeutic hormone optimization back 100 years in women. And here's why. They don't even give them testosterone, Jay. They give them estradiol and progesterone and avoid testosterone. They're so morally and ethically and energetically bankrupt in understanding this. And again, it's a lack of awareness. And the reason is because of the WHI, right? Because most of the women who are prescribing hormones are boomer doctors. They're late 50s and really, honestly, they're probably more in their mid to late 60s prescribing hormones who, came up during the WHI crisis. Hormones are bad. And so mentally now, we'll give them, not equine, but porcine stuff. But, because we know that doesn't cause cancer, but we're not going to give them testosterone because, as you said it, women don't need testosterone. That's only for men. That's what they think.
I know.
It's literally insane.
It is.
Insane. Out of medical school, and that's what they think. It is incredible.
It really is the lack of knowledge. And that's why I say all the time, like, when we meet people and they'll say, well, can I go to my doctor? And I say, certainly go to your doctor. You can talk to them about this, but they're not trained in this, right? They don't take the extensive time to learn and study. They're fed by the pharmaceutical reps, and they're not prepared to do the kind of testing, or more importantly, to interpret the testing to understand what is the difference between quote unquote normal and optimization. Because when I first got involved in this, Jay, about 5 years ago, a buddy I recommended he was a D1 college football player, and he was, the typical lost his libido, lost his energy, lost his focus. And he had a clinic by him. He went to see this gal. He said, you should go. So I went. I got tested. My testosterone at 57 was 555. So now,
exactly.
when I look back at it, if I had my MD do it, he would have said, "Hey, for your age, that's great.
You're really great."
Exactly. And so she taught me the difference between normal and optimization. And then when I got it optimized, everything changed as far as leaning up, mental focus, all that stuff that we've talked about. So I want to say this specifically to all the listeners here. I don't care what age you are, you should get your hormones tested. To have a baseline. But if you're experiencing any of these types of symptoms, or like Jay mentioned, if you're dealing with being overweight or obesity, or you go on these yo-yo diets and you lose weight and then you gain the weight back on, there's a metabolic insufficiency. There's a hormonal imbalance that's at the root cause, and you can keep banging your head against the wall. The only thing you're going to get is a headache, because none of that stuff is going to work ultimately until, again, systemically, you get optimized on a cellular level.
Yeah. And honestly, yeah, it's well said. And, dude, every man has to experience it, right? We can tell them and talk to them till we're blue in the face. But as I always say this, your life, if you're lucky and blessed enough to become hormonally optimized, will literally be looked at as before and after testosterone. There is no other way to experience it, right? Like, again, that's a joke to you and me, but there are literally hundreds of millions of men in the world, and really probably 50 to 100 million men in the United States, who have no idea what we're talking about and are literally going through their life in hell. Literally physiological, emotional, and spiritual hell, because they are disconnected from everything. God, vitality, sexual function. I mean, bro, imagine some of these guys, right? Like, their life is belly fat, never get an erection. They have to take 200 milligrams of Viagra just to even be erect for 20 or 30 minutes. And by the way, we should say this, and there are doctors out there that will back me up when I say this, Viagra causes almost every heart attack in the United States. Because even though the myocardial infarction happens because they're poor metabolic health, and obviously they probably have plaque and all these other things going on, man, the way that stuff works is those guys are in poor health, and it's like stimulating all the nitric oxide endothelial sensitivity. And it also can occlude an artery or occlude, a very big blood vessel, and they stroke out. And that's what's happening. And there's so many women that work as like prostitutes or madams or whatever. Like, they talk about when guys have heart attacks with them. It was right after they took the pill, the blue pill or the green pill or whatever it is, the pink pill. And again, this is not covered in medicine, but I've had very smart mentors tell me about this, when I started understanding about the nitric oxide stimulation of Cialis and Viagra. I stay away from Viagra because, dude, it's a horrible drug, man. I mean, it really can cause a lot of bad effects, especially if you're in poor vascular health, which again is what 80% of American society. But the truth is, man, is the point I was attempting to make is that we're just in a society right now where too many men and women for that matter, but we're talking about men right now, have no idea that their life sucks. They just think that this is, as you said earlier, a natural part of aging. And it's not. It's not. It's absolutely not. And the fact that the medical establishment refuses to talk about this. I mean, bro, since you and I last spoke, I think it was 3 weeks ago, the VA finally, 9 years later, after they convened in 2017, finally gave an indication now for vets to get testosterone. And by the way, I looked at the prescribing indications, and it's an absolute joke. They're still not giving anybody anything. And then they're giving like older men androgel, which, as you know, is weak and worthless and not even effective. But it took them 9 years after they convened in DC in 2017 about the effects, the scientific and reputable effects of using therapeutic hormones. And so it's so broken. But at the end of the day, dude, they don't want people healthy. I mean, again, we can sing to the mountaintops. At the end of the day, they want sick, fat, depressed, insulin resistant, and highly inflamed people, because that is the mainstream bullseye, buyer of their products, which are, again, pills from Big Pharma. That's it.
So now you're really hitting at the core issue of why longevity medicine is becoming, it's the alternative to people who are proactive to their health. Because as you mentioned, big pharma, big food, right? Agra, they are totally invested in a sick society because that's how they profit. And I know there's people listening right now thinking that you and I are both wearing our tinfoil hats, which you wore in the last show. And
hey, I got it right here.
I was waiting for you to pull that.
It's always ready, man.
There you go. I was waiting for you to pull that back out. But no, the reality is, folks, this is true. It may be hard for you to hear. You may say, Jay, really? Our government wants us to be sick? Yeah, I mean, because
they do.
Exactly. Who's funding the politicians? Who's driving policy, right? All you have to do is look back through COVID, and that should be, enough evidence for you to see that system is broken. The only one who's going to advocate for you is you. And as you mentioned, Jay, before, you have to be an informed consumer. So whether it's shows like this, it's doing your own research. Do not leave it up to the system to determine what is right for you and what's not right for you. Because those decisions are made based on profit, either profit of the insurance company or profit from the providers. You have to take that control. You have to take the ball and decide, how are you going to define what your life looks like 5 years from now, 10 years, 20 years from now? And the decision you make today will determine your future. Don't wait. Get proactive. Do the right things. Get the testing done. Maybe you're great, and so be it. Love it. That's the case. But if not, you can take small steps now, which can have great impact in the future. And Jay, you probably know this. The Rand Corporation did a study in 2009 of the top 5 Fortune 500 companies, and what they found, for every dollar spent on proactive care, you save $3 on reactive care. So it literally saves you money, not the least of which your quality of life, by being proactive.
Listen, so I have a statement, and I borrowed this from the late, great Dr. Jim Meehan, who was very instrumental in helping me write the TOT Bible. He died of cancer like 2 years ago. He's an amazing man, very, very great spiritual mentor of mine. But he said, it's up to us to become the proactive scientists of our own health. And, I carry that statement on with me wherever I go. I always attribute it to him because it was his statement, but it really is true, dude. It's exactly what you just said. There's no one coming to save you. It's up to you as an individual. There's no doctor. There's no researcher. There's nobody pouring through your medical records looking to optimize you. I say this all the time. Like, if you go to your GP, your family doctor, whatever these people think they have, and say, hey, doc, I want you to help me to live to 150 with vitality and vigor. They'll look at you like you're insane. What? Again, they're not health and wellness optimizers. They are disease and sick care and illness medicine evaluators. They don't have an ability to work on your health and wellness. And if you, in your mind, think that all you can pay is your, co-payment to your bullshit medical insurance, which, by the way, let's just admit it, our insurance is literally a scam. It's always been a scam. It got way worse during the Obama, care nonsense act where they stole everything from people. But at this point, the truth is, if you're not smart enough to realize that you pay for that as insurance in the event of a catastrophic occurrence, right? Because again, a lot of people face medical bankruptcy. So we pay it in case we're in this horrible car accident, we need to be life flighted or whatever. And then it's a giant scam and they bill us $1 million or $800,000 to keep us alive or whatever. And so that's the only reason you have it, but you're never going to get wellness from any of that. And so if your mindset is that you're going to use, again, the sick care medical system and your insurance to provide you health or health care, then you have your priorities backwards. You have to realize that you're going to have to pay cash out of your pocket to work with physicians like you or others who truly have an interest in allowing you to thrive, not survive, thrive, to live at your longest and fullest, in the context of health and longevity. And that's what people have to really understand, that it's up to us, it's up to you watching this podcast to take ownership, again, to become the proactive scientist of your own health. And look, it is going to cost you money. It is going to cost you out-of-pocket expenses. But to your point, and again, I see this all the time, the amount of money that we spend to be proactive pales in comparison to a major life-altering event like a heart attack, a cerebral stroke, a vascular event. I mean, there's so many things that can happen to you if you're in poor health. And dude, Jay, you nailed it. I mean, dude, the average cost of one of those events in midlife is somewhere between $680,000 and $800,000, which, by the way, for the average American leads to medical bankruptcy. 68%, this is a stat, it's in my book from 2019, but 68% of people who suffer one of those medical events in midlife deal with medical bankruptcy, right? So it's like, if you're not willing to spend, and I move this up now, but I used to say between $5,000 and $10,000 a year on your personal health care, then your priorities are completely inverted. Because again, $650,000 to $800,000 for one event. I mean, add that $10,000 up for a lot of years and you still don't get there. So in my opinion now, and I haven't said this, but I would change this. You got to be willing to spend 15 to 20 grand a year on your personal health care if you truly do want to live long and thrive. It's that simple.
Yeah, when you think, right, it's not just, if you're doing TRT or peptides, but it's your workouts, right? It's the food that you eat. I mean, it's all of it, right? It's all of it. It's the big picture part of it. So I want to catch and talk to you about a couple other things before we go. Again, Jay Campbell here, Bio Longevity Labs. As you can tell, he's got an incredible amount of energy for an old guy. And I say that as an old guy because I'm older than him.
I know. Well, we're the same. We both have the same amount of energy because we're optimized. I mean, we can go all day.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And this is what makes it so much fun. So let's first talk about what are some of your favorite peptides? Because I know there's some new ones that came out. You talked about cloth and a few others that you're really excited about.
So my company, again, biolongevitylabs.com, whatever your code is, just insert that in there. So people can go and get 15% off. We're always running sales, but we are now probably one of the top 3 biggest research use only peptide and bioregulator and small molecule companies in the world. We have 97 SKUs. We have all the bleeding edge products, but the ones that you're mentioning that are recent and obviously proprietary to us, meaning we own the patent and the trademark on them, is FLGR 242, which is known as recombinant follistatin. And then the other one is Clotho. And I'll start with follistatin first. So a lot of people in the performance enhancement / bodybuilding space are familiar with follistatin because it's been around for like 15 years. And basically what it is a myostatin inhibitor. And what that means is myostatin is a protein in the body that is governing muscle growth. So our bodies have this like amazing homeostatic mechanism, depending on our genetics and our androgen receptors, to shut down muscle growth based on like our genetics, our unique genetics. So some people can be way more muscular, some people cannot be muscular. And that's all regulated by myostatin. So we created this product, our chemist, Mike Farber, shout out to Mike Farber, created a product that if you inject it, and it can be injected as much as once every 2 weeks. It can be injected a couple times a week. You can even inject it 3 times a week. There have been people injecting it daily at microdoses. Will increase muscle size if you eat enough protein and calories. You got to eat carbohydrates too, and then train, I would call aggressively or progressively. You don't have to train heavy, but you got to train consistently and in a way intense enough to build muscle. But we have had people that have put on 10 to 15 pounds of skeletal muscle within 90 days of taking it. So it's an amazing product. It's actually undergoing right now phase 1A trials in China. But our hope is that we will be able to prove that it builds muscle and also prevents fat loss, especially in people using GLPs, which, as you know, is one of the biggest side effects that occurs for people using GLPs. So obviously we've been selling that since December of last year. So it's now been in the marketplace for close to 7.5 months. We have thousands of people using it, and all the feedback is incredible. And then Clotho is from the same chemist, and Clotho is where all of the longevity research is going into, because Clotho is actually an endocrine protein / peptide that is responsible for lowering biological age. And what I mean by that is that it works on so many different metabolic and cellular pathways and cascades that when you inject it once every 2 weeks is all you need to take it at like a very low 10 microgram dose. It increases the body's what is called inter-individual level that's already fluctuating, but is going down as we age to simulate a younger, healthier cell. So what will happen for people that use it is you will improve endothelial tissue sensitivity. So your smell will be improved. Your eyes will improve. Bro, I was wearing glasses at night to drive and I stopped wearing them now. So my vision has come back to where I always had 20/10 fighter pilot vision and I lost it. And now I don't have to wear glasses at night anymore. So my vision has improved. You will also notice like better erectile strength if you're a man. For women, better sexual function. They get wetter, more lubricated faster. And then the other less subtle things or more subtle things would be just better brain power, better vascular function. If you have kidney issues, it can dramatically improve nephron space in the kidney tubules. So a lot of people that have PKD or whatever, CKD, which is polycystic kidney disease, our expectation is that by using this, you will regress and actually improve kidney function. So you won't have to go on dialysis as fast. Some people can probably, depending on what stage they are in that disease, because it affects a lot of people, can probably reverse it completely. So they're very, very, very powerful peptides, again, in the longevity space. And we expect within the next, 3 to 6 months to have much more of an awareness from the studies that we're doing in China on what they actually do. And I can definitely tell you, without letting the cat out of the bag, that if we can prove that it reverses CKD or PKD, however you want to look at it, polycystic kidney disease, it's worth a lot of money to a pharmaceutical company. So, the potential of that, is also out there. And then Mike is hard at work right now building another product, which I should mention, which is called Lepto-3GR. And we technically call it a super retatrutide, but it's not a GLP. It's a small molecule, but it works in a similar pathway and similar mechanism that a stage 3 GLP like a retatrutide works, but it binds much harder and has a longer half-life. So what that means is for the end user is you can probably take a couple doses a month versus having to take 2 or 3 doses a week when you're microdosing like a retatrutide. And so far, the people that are using it, because we have people in trials right now, are raving about it. So it's a pretty amazing product. And then again, he created a binding construct that's a 19-day half-life. It's a patented album binding construct, and he can use that and modify lots of different peptides. The next thing that he's working on is a thymosin beta like TB500 to extend the half-life of thymosin beta and also make it stronger. So our hope is that we'll be able to take like a microdose of thymosin beta once a month, and it will improve, really everything. Like if you have injuries, it'll heal your injuries faster. It'll suppress inflammation, suppress interleukin, cytokines, et cetera. So it'll be like another one to really like take in addition to using FLGR242 and Clotho to make everything else better. So as I told you before, and I'll say it again, we really are in a golden age right now for peptide formulation and synthesis. It's just as an end user / patient, you just have to make sure that where you're getting your products are coming from reputable sources that actually test and verify with batch numbers and lot numbers and certificates of authenticity. Again, vetting everything they tell you is what you're getting in the vial.
Sure. So 2 questions on that, Jay. So the first one is on the dosing. So let's say like Clotho, if you only need to take it twice a month, typically the shelf life on a peptide once it's constituted is about a month. So do you only get a fraction of the use of that, or does it stay longer in the vial? And so what's your thoughts on that?
So that's not true. So that's a very old wives' tale about the length of efficacy of peptides in a vial. So again, as a guy using peptides for a long time, I've actually investigated this with very, very high level biochemical synthesizers and formulators. And we have deduced that a peptide post reconstitution kept refrigerated probably will maintain efficacy for up to 3 years. Now, will it be 99% of what it was when you first reconstituted it? No. But how far will it degrade from an efficacy standpoint? I've got lots of theories from very smart people, but they say nobody says it goes below 80%. I've had one biochemist who's one of the smartest guys in the world say it might go down to 78%. Now, again, I mean this stating that it stays in refrigeration, that it stays cold. It's not exposed to incandescent gradient light. You're not perforating the vial and letting a bunch of air and other things get into the peptide. And look, man, to prove what I'm saying is not bullshit, I've used tesamorelin and ipamorelin and probably BPC and TB500 that I've had in the fridge for 5 years, and I've gotten effects, right? So the pharmaceutical companies, the compounders, even some of the research companies, they just say that because they have to,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It's like an FDA thing, it's like the same thing when a drug comes in a pill that's, a tablet and it's, it's scored and all that stuff. And they say, oh, it's best used by this date. That doesn't mean it's dead. It's just what they have to put on there from like a sterility process and control manufacturing standpoint to state that dude, let's just be honest. It's just a way to make more.
Of course it is.
More,
of
right?
course it is. Yeah.
They're not going to tell you that, oh, it magically goes bad. And if you swallow that pill at 13 months, you're going to die, right? But they clearly do create urgency and scarcity in their drugs. But, I've debated people about the peptide thing, but as a person who's used them and reconstituted and put them in, because I put them in big brown. And by the way, this is what people should do if you really want to become anal retentive. Put them in like a brown amber vial, because obviously that maintains light sensitivity.
Right.
So that keeps them out of incandescent light. And so if you're going to keep it in the refrigerator, because like for somebody like me, again, I'm an old school OG, I'll get a BPC and TB500 and I'll put them together. When I used to get them solo, and I'll put them in a giant amber vial, and I combine, 10 vials of 10 milligrams or 15 vials of each of 10 milligrams and put them in that amber vial, and I'll inject that goddamn vial, dude, for 4 years. Maybe some of them probably 5 years whenever I need BPC and TB500. And I always get an effect, right? Now, obviously, I'm very sterile. I use the alcohol pad and I wipe the top before I inject and all that stuff. But I've heard way too many people say that they go bad in 30 days. And that's just because the pharmaceutical company wants you to buy more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally makes sense. Last time we spoke, you talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said in 2 years, you felt that we won't need to do injectables to deliver peptides. And so speak to that again, please.
Probably less now, because lots of stuff is happening. Again, AI is doing what is called iterative mapping, and they're processing these computational analyses with multiple delivery systems, right? Like, so in addition to, well, dude, it's so crazy what's happening right now, but I just ran into a guy that I've known a long time, and he's now doing this. He's in this space. He's got a transdermal peptide, and he swears to me, and this guy's really smart, and I don't think that he would ever bullshit me. He says that he can make a transdermal form out of any peptide, and it will be 95% as efficacious as an injection. And he's got his math, and he's got his computational analysis, and he's got all his science, and he's got all of his literature. And he sent it to me. I just haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but he's got people using it right now. And I've been messaging these people, and they're like, bro, it's legit. So to that point, I already told you about the Velcros, the patches,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So that's coming. They're going to be like 40 to 80 micron needles. Once they get to 80, they can, any peptide. So you can literally just come up and just put it on your arm and you won't even feel it. It's so small and so fine, but they need 80 because remember what I told you, the longer the chain, the more it has to be injected.
Right.
So some of these peptides are really, really long chain. And so you got to have 80 needles. So, but again, these are literally like Japanese steel. They're so small and so hypodermic, you don't even feel it. I mean, literally, it's like a butter going, a hot knife going through butter. You won't feel it. So you got the transdermals, you got that, you've got the tongue strips. I mean, they're making nano inhalers, right? You've seen carbon 60 now. That's like the big thing with carbon 60. They have like nanomolecules. So they look like a vape pen, but there's no smoke. There's nothing inhale. It's just literally like a high powered, called aqueous mist that goes up your nose. So there's all these really cool delivery systems that are coming. Yeah. So, I mean, dude, less than 2 years, like probably a year now, there'll be like 3 or 4 options that will be right there. Maybe it won't be 100% as good as an injection, but it'll be right there.
Yeah.
The barrier of entry for peptides will be removed because, as you know, there's still a lot of people that are afraid of needles.
Sure.
Which is ridiculous. We didn't talk about this, but we should. Like, I talked about this with that woman today, the perimenopause woman. There's no reason for any man or woman to be afraid of needles, bro. You can use a 31 gauge or a 32 gauge insulin syringe and, dart or needle or pen, whatever you want to call it, and inject testosterone and MCT oil through it. So I can walk up to my wife and I can be like, hey, babe, it's time for your testosterone shot, and inject her with a 32 gauge insulin needle and go pop and done. And she doesn't even feel it. So no person today should be afraid of needles because, again, they've improved the delivery system and just call it the permeability of the testosterone solution in MCT oil. And there's others, there's also grapeseed oil and stuff like that, but it goes through a very fine, very thin, very small needle. And so you shouldn't sit there and say, oh, I can't do needles. Because how many guys have told you that, bro? Oh, I'm afraid of needles, bro. I can't do it. You're like, dude, you're a bitch. But come on, you cannot feel a 31 or a 32 gauge needle. So, again, there's nothing really preventing, from my opinion, from a barrier of entry standpoint, anybody doing any of these things now because there's no pain. And I don't care how sensitive you are, you cannot feel a 31 or 32 gauge insulin needle in your arm with testosterone. You can't feel it. It's psychological more than it is physiological, right? So maybe a couple times, before you're like not afraid of it anymore, but it's like there's no pain. And imagine too, with peptides soon, it'll only be a matter of time. And maybe again, 12 months to 15 months to 16 to 18 months where peptides injected will just be for hardcore people like us.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, somebody who was never a fan of needles when I started doing is like, wow, this is no big deal at all. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Everybody has a fear of needles until you start doing it.
Yeah. And there's a technique to it as well, right?
There is.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And we
100%.
And we teach that, and reputable clinics teach that as well too. So look,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Right. So the last thing I want to cover is talk about your book. Where can people find the book? Where can they find your other books? You talked about the TRT Bible. I mean, you got so much great resources out there, and so if they want to access the book, where can they get it?
All right, so let me see, because I want to give you an exclusive. Can I share? Yeah, I think I can.
Yeah, exclusive. I love it.
If they'll let me share. An exclusive, baby. So can you see that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that is coming out in, I want to say, a month or maybe less. My hope is that I have it in my hands because I'm presenting it what is called Prosperity Camp, which is a giant publishers conference in early August in San Diego. And I've had a ghostwriter writing this for me. It's first time we've ever hired a ghostwriter to help me write this book. But honestly, man, like I needed it and I'm really grateful that I had it. I can stop sharing now. Because it's a normie book. It's a book for people who are not familiar with my work, who are not into the technical science, like, the stuff that I'm known for, who literally just want to be like, hey, I want to look and feel my absolute best as I age. How can I do it? And how can I learn in a way that it doesn't overwhelm me? And so I'm really, really proud and confident of this book. It's pretty epic. That cover just came to me today. So you're the first person that's ever even seen it. Nobody even knows it's coming. But my hope is that it comes out. Yeah, my hope is it comes out by the end of this month. But very truthfully, it is a blueprint guide. It's literally like, okay, I don't know shit about testosterone or peptides or anything. What do I need to learn as a basis? And then what can you push me into that I can start doing that can radically change my life? And dude, that's exactly what that book is. And so I'm really, really proud of this book. Like, again, no one's even seen it. I haven't even finalized the book, meaning like master edited it.
Sure.
I mean, I've got both of my primary copywriters and the ghostwriter, and they all say it's absolutely the most amazing thing ever, but I haven't even seen it yet, so hopefully I see it either tomorrow or Wednesday, and then I kind of give it my final edits, and then, it goes into the whole game of Amazon and all that. But the other book, just to speak, is called Metabolic Awakening. I will send the PDF absolutely free to anybody in your audience that watches this podcast. Of course, just send an email to my team at contact@jcampbell.com. And then if they want to go to my website just got overhauled, but the website domain is jcampbell.com/free-info. They can get a downloadable free PDF of all 9 of my other books. So all the, the Testosterone Bible, the Peptide Bible, all those things are there. But yeah, if they want to get the Metabolic Awakening book, which is, look, it's really technical, honestly, it's so big. I mean, look at this book, dude. It's 720 pages. This is the hardbound, but it's so scientific. Like my copywriter was like, I didn't want to make it this scientific, but he was like, bro, we have to. This is like the doctor's reference guide. And it really is, right? It's 1,300 scientific studies. But if you're not going to read it, just literally go to the last page of every chapter and read the key findings, and you'll get all your information about like how to microdose them, what to do, all the things we talked about on this amazing podcast. It's all in there, and it's pretty simple and summarized, but it's very, very, very long, and it's not boring, but it's very scientific.
It's like the longevity medicine's Merck manual.
Bro, it is so insane. I mean, like I've had actually people that have come to me, they're like, dude, how did you do this? And I was like, took 8 months. We didn't use AI. I will never do another book like that again. I've done 3 of those now. And I'm grateful to be able to say that I put out really powerful scientific reference manuals. But again, as you know, dude, the average person can't even read, Jay.
No.
Like you can't put books out like that. You got to put out short, like this book, I think is going to be 230 pages. I've never put out a book under 400 pages. Right. So like, I don't even know what that's like, but obviously the people that are helping me do this are like, this is what you got to do, dude, to get on USA Today and New York Times.
Yeah. So
I'm like, okay, I'll listen to you guys.
This is to the broader public, where, you can capture everyone. I'm sure it's written at a level in which, for the average reader, which is fantastic. But the least of which is just, like you said, having that blueprint in front of you that you can follow and understand, and then finding great resources and then taking action. That's what it really comes down to, man. We took a lot more time than I anticipated. And like I said, it's, again, to the audience,
it's so awesome though, man.
It has been great. And to the audience who doesn't know, we've attempted this 2 other times unsuccessfully, and to get it done today is an absolute blessing. And you're a blessing to have as a resource and someone who is an advocate for the, for humanity, sharing your truth, sharing the truth. It is a blessing for all of us. And I'm glad to call you my friend now. And I'm excited to see where the future goes, and can't wait to read your new book too.
Yeah. And I'll send it to you. You'll be one of the first people to get it, but man, listen, man, I'm honored that we finally had a chance to do this, and it came out better than I think the first one we did. So I think this is going to be awesome. And obviously, you can text me, call me if there's any way I can serve you. Just let me know when this comes out, because my team, so my team has a new goal of like the ones that I tell, because I'll text my team after this and be like, hey, I just did an amazing podcast with Jay. Make sure you guys get the file, because they like the clip stuff.
Yeah.
So if you guys are okay with that, you guys put it out first and you do your clips.
Of course.
But they want me to ask for like raw files of like the best podcast now. And this was epic. So I'm definitely going to ask you for that whenever you're ready to give it to
Well,
us.
absolutely do that for sure. Absolutely do that for sure.
Awesome,
any final thing you want to say?
No, but just if people want to follow me on social media where I'm not blackballed, suppressed, and shadow banned, you can find me on X. You can find me on X. That's the one place they still give me free reign. Somewhat.
Thank
I
God,
am
Elon.
definitely heavily shadow banned, but Jay Campbell 333. That's where you can find me.
Super. Appreciate you, brother. And as I said,
Thank you, my brother.
ladies and gentlemen, your health is your responsibility, right? Your future is your responsibility. It's not only a responsibility to yourself, it's a responsibility to your family, to your kids. It's about being a good role model. It's about setting the standard. It's about taking action and initiative. I've always said, once you are empowered with the knowledge, you have to act. You have to act because at this point, the only one you're hurting is yourself. So here's my suggestion to you: whether you're living, close to me or anywhere in other countries who listen or around the country, go find yourself somebody who's doing this kind of work and go get an assessment done. I'm telling you, it would be worth your while. It could literally change your life with your spouse, with your significant other, and set you on a course that you never knew was possible. And when I tell you that 50, 60, 70 people are living just incredible lives, not limited by physical, restrictions, mental restrictions, you can have that. It's not a dream. It's a reality. Go chase your reality. So as I always say, Triple P Nation, you be you. Just be the best you, and you show up your best, be your best, and life will turn out to be the best. Until next time, be well.